I love it. Don't touch it. No, this is awesome. Oh, yeah. I open the window. What was that? We can start. Ready? You guys ready? Good evening. Thank you for coming to the Speakfield Town Council chambers tonight, Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. I call this meeting to order. There were no votes taken in executive session. Under our prayer, please. We come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, nurture the bonds of community. Amen.
Amen.
Salute to the flag, please. Thank you. Emergency evacuations and health notification.
Thank you, Council President. There's two main exits from the Town Council chambers to the left of the stage. Up the stairs will take you out the back of the building. At the back of the council chambers to your right. Those stairs will take you out the front of the building. Just past that on the right is the men's facility. Up the stairs to the left is the ladies' facility. Please do not use the elevator in the time of emergency.
Thank you. Presentations, we have one from the U.S. EPA update on the Davis liquid waste site.
So we do have it loaded right on the desktop if you want to open it up. If you don't mind introducing yourself and your team too.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Cunningham. I'm with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and with me today we also have Aaron Shaheen. He's the Community Involvement Coordinator for US EPA for the site, and Gary Jablonski. He is also the State of Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management Project Manager for this site. And we are here today because the Town Council invited us to give an update on the Davis Liquid Waste Superfund site located in Smithfield. And please, if anyone on the panel has any questions for me, feel free to interrupt. It'd be easier that way. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the exact location, Davis Superfund site is located in this upper left quadrant of the city. It's a very rural area, and historically was used in the late 1970s as a dump site for liquid waste, what are called lap packs, and bulk waste in barrels and things like that. It was also for a long time covered by up to estimates of 6 million tires, which made the cleanup of the site very difficult and delayed it for a very long time. It was added to the national priorities list, which means it effectively became a Superfund site in 1983. Between 1997 and 2001, more than 1,400 drums, 15,000 laboratory containers, and that just means containerized medical waste essentially, or lab waste. And up to 12 million tires were removed. The exact number of tires kind of varies with the estimate with the agency, but we believe it's between 7 and 12 million tires. And due to the contamination of the groundwater, a municipal water line went in 1997 to provide a permanent source of water to residents along Log Road and Burlingame Road. From 1999 to 2001, approximately 2,000 cubic yards of contaminated soil were treated on site via a method called thermal desorption, where essentially you heat up the soil, collect the vapors that are volatilized off, and then you keep the soil on site. From 2001 to 2010, we monitored the groundwater and developed what's called a pump and treat remedy, where you remove water, treat it, and then put it back in. Unfortunately, that was ultimately deemed to be unfeasible for a variety of reasons. And in 2020, there was a new public hearing and what's called a record of decision, which some of you on the board were involved with, I believe, on comments. And this new remedy is essentially in situ treatment with injections of various natural chemicals that help speed up what's called biodegradation through bacteria of degrading the chemicals. And since that record of decision was implemented in the last 4 years, they've done a series of groundwater well installations and what's called tracer testing to really define the flow of groundwater and understand where it's going and refining the remedy. Now, this is just a historical site photo from 1991, and it's not a great picture, but it's the kind of the only one of the few we have aerials showing the extent of the tire coverage. So all of this black area here, those are all tires. And like I said, those are covering all of the other waste. So step one was to remove the tires, and that was a very long process. I was not around for that, but from what I understand, that was a very long process, which delayed the cleanup of this site for a very long time. And this is a photo of the same area from 2011. You can see this area here is where all of the contaminated soil, this is essentially the most contaminated part of the site. And just for scale, these are trailers right here, and cars right here. And I believe that area is approximately 7 acres right there. And that has been cleaned up and is ready for future use. Now, the bigger problem becomes the groundwater, because a lot of these chemicals that were dumped here are what are called DNABs. So that stands for dense non-aqueous phase liquid, and that essentially means they are heavier than water. So if you put them into water, they will sink, and they will not stop sinking until it reaches an impermeable surface. So if you think concrete's kind of permeable, so it'll go right through concrete, it'll go through cracks and rocks, it'll just continue going on until it reaches either a clay layer or a solid hard rock. And that's what makes them so challenging. And unfortunately at this site, that did occur, and the bedrock is quite fractured at this site. And what essentially is happening is, this is your source area right here. This is Log Road right here. This is Burlingame Road here. Groundwater flows generally in a northern direction here. So what's essentially happening is you have your source area here, and as you get farther from it, the concentrations decrease, but it's also being spread via this plume. And at one point, houses along Log Road here, their residential wells were contaminated, and that is one of the reasons why the permanent water supply went in. Now, this is just a quick little picture to try to get you to understand what's going on. So if you picture here, here's little trucks dumping waste, sinking to the ground. This is your groundwater table, this blue line here. This is just soil. We call it overburden, but just think of porous soil, sand, water flows through it relatively easy. You can dig down through it pretty easily. The problem becomes, like I said, once it reaches fractured bedrock. So in this area of the state, and most of Rhode Island actually, bedrock is pretty shallow. At this site, it's around 20 feet deep, but there's are areas where it's just shallow. It comes to the surface actually. So when you have these liquids, they will continue going down, and what happens is they go into these little fractures here. And what happens at that point depends upon a lot of things. Depends on the flow, whether these fractures are connected to other fractures, like you can see right here, these two fractures are connected, this one's not. And treatment of that is very difficult once it gets into there, because it's very, very difficult to get that out. You could be talking fractures that are less than 1 millimeter thick. Some cases, the width of a hair. And if you get these chemicals in there, it's very difficult to remove. So what we've been seeing at the site is we've cleaned up the soil, we've cleaned up a lot of the overburden, but unfortunately what's happening is, even though the groundwater is flowing relatively quickly over the site, the chemicals that are in these fractures are what's called back diffusing. So they're actually redissolving back into the groundwater. So you can have fresh, clean groundwater coming through right here, traveling across the site, but it's becoming contaminated by the chemicals that are caught essentially in these fractions. And we're not entirely sure, because of the poor record keeping of the facility manager, how much is dumped at this site. We estimate there's between 3,000 and 300,000 pounds of hazardous liquids still in this bedrock area that we need to treat. So the plan for this is to do a series of groundwater injections. So like I said, we've treated the surface soil already. It is clean. It is negligible risk to offsite residents and on-site workers or anything like that. Right now, the property, the properties might be in limbo. We're not entirely 100% sure about the status of the actual contaminated site because the owner recently passed away. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there. And the residential properties are connected to public water. Now, having said that, 4 residents, back when the water line was installed, decided they did not want to connect to the water line. And EPA and Rhode Island DEM cannot force anybody to connect to a water line. So that's their choice. However, in response to our meeting last, I believe it was April last year when we were here, there was some interest in offering water sampling to those residents. And we did reach out to those residents to offer water sampling. Currently, 2 of the residents have responded and have signed the required access agreements to allow the responsible party to go and collect samples for analysis to see what the groundwater is. 2 of them have not responded. We plan on going out later on this month to actually collect the samples. And we do intend on going to the 2 remaining houses that have not responded to our requests to just knock on the door and see if they want to do it right then and there. However, we do not expect there to be any contamination at those residents. We have no reason to believe at this point that those wells are contaminated or that there are under any risk. However, if the testing does reveal exceedances of either the EPA risk levels or the Rhode Island standards, then they would again be offered the opportunity to be connected to the water line, free of cost, yes.
At no cost?
Yeah, if their water shows contamination levels above this, either the Rhode Island standards or the EPA risk levels, then yes, it would be no cost to them.
Thank you.
So like I said, we plan on going out either next week or I believe the week after. That's kind of being worked out. So what that leaves us with is the groundwater remediation remedy, because one of the goals of Superfund program is to restore the aquifer to productive use. So we want to clean the groundwater up so it can be returned to, in this case, most likely what's called a GB aquifer. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that, but it's a Rhode Island classification, which means the groundwater can be used for treatment, used for drinking with treatment. So like I said earlier, the 2020 record of decision requires enhanced biodegradation as an interim remedy. And this involves injecting naturally occurring materials. So typically it's an oil of some sort, usually soybean oil, corn oil, something of that nature, along with nutrients to stimulate natural bacteria that are present to break down these, what they're called chlorinated solvents. And a lot of them are things you may have used in the past. Like brake cleaners contain TCE, PCE, dry cleaners, PCE. So those kind of chemicals there that can be naturally broken down by bacteria if you just give them the correct amount of like food and nutrients. So that's what the plan is here, to do, inject a mixture of these naturally occurring chemicals into the ground in order to promote biodegradation and reduction of those chemicals to non-toxic elements. This method has been demonstrated effective and safe at numerous Superfund sites, and it's very common. The full-scale remedial design is currently in progress, and we hope to have that be complete by September 2024, and then that would mean the remedy would actually go into effect in early 2025. So that's when I would actually start injecting it. Now, I will say this is a long process. This part of the remedy is scheduled for 10 years. And that's mainly just to see how well it's working. And then from there, 10 years from now, we would then decide, well, is this going to be the permanent solution for the site, or is it just, or should we try something else? Unfortunately, with this volume of contamination, you kind of need to monitor for a long time and see what's working before you go to switch to something else. And at the moment, this is the best solution for this type of problem. So moving forward from there, I know one thing that's been asked about a lot is institutional controls. So for those of you who are not familiar, institutional control is essentially something that is designed to prevent human exposure and prevent the spread of contamination. So one of the institutional controls that's being looked at for the site and has kind of already been implemented by switching over the residents to public water is eliminating the use of groundwater wells. So that does two things. Number one, it reduces the risk to the person using it because it separates out the contamination from the human. So if you're not drinking the contaminated water, you're not getting exposed. So it's about eliminating exposure in this case. The other benefit is if you can kind of picture, like, let's say a big bathtub, and you have a bunch of people around it with a bunch of straws. They're all sucking on it. That's the equivalent of a groundwater system. Every one of those wells on Log Road and Burlingame Road, they're sucking water out of the ground. And when they do that, it causes the water, as the water level drops from the removing water, water moves in to replace that water that's been lost. And in that, when it's doing that, it's also causing the contamination to spread. So
Are you talking about the 4 residences that are not connected?
no, I'm talking just in general at this
Okay.
point. Yeah. So in general, it causes significant uses of wells, and we have a significant number of residences along that road, and that's each person's about 200 gallons a day. So you're talking many thousands of gallons of water withdrawn a day. That's causing the water body to shift northwards, drawing the contamination with it. And by eliminating that, by installing the public water line, we've reduced that and caused the contamination to stabilize and stay within the site boundaries. So that's one of the reasons we want to move forward with additional institutional controls. So institutional controls are a requirement of the record of decision. So that record of decision, is a document that the responsible parties must sign on to and implement. So they are required to do these institutional controls. And currently, there are no enforceable use restrictions on the site process of this property. So theoretically, people could, at this very moment, go install a well and remove as much water as they wanted, which is obviously something we do not want. Now,
Are you talking about people already connected to the water, to public water?
they could, yes.
I mean, why would they do that if they're connected to public water?
So I can tell you that some of them are using it for irrigation. We know several of them who are currently using it for irrigation wells. And in small quantities, that's not that big of a deal. But what we want to prevent is people being exposed to the water and having it to be such a large volume of water removed that it's causing the plume to migrate. So, and to your point earlier, that yes, currently we believe there are 4 residences still using groundwater. While that's not ideal, we don't believe the volume of water being removed by those 4 residences is significant enough to impact the spread of the contamination to a substantial margin. However, if all of those houses that are on public water are using their residential wells, then yes, that is a problem. And typically when a public water line is installed, one of the conditions is that groundwater wells are decommissioned. So there are obviously at least 2 that I know of that fell through the cracks, or maybe they installed their own well. I don't really know the exact history and what they did. But typically when a water line is installed, one of the conditions is the groundwater wells have to come out of service to prevent scenarios exactly like this.
But that didn't happen?
We don't believe that happened, no.
Well, wasn't the EPA involved in the installation of the public water?
EPA does not know. So this was what's called a TRP, or responsible party led site. So we oversee the responsible party performing these actions. So it's actually the responsible party installing the wells, installing the water line and doing what's called the checklist to make sure all of these things are done. I do not know if these wells that are being used for irrigation, and as far as I know, there's only 2 of them. We do not know at this point if there are new wells, if there are the wells that were existing. I mean, it's entirely possible they could have installed a shallow well themselves. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get to, is that one of the problems is right now, since there are no institutional controls, outside of local town ordinances about whatever requirements you may have for installing wells. That would be perfectly legal in this site because there's no institutional controls preventing it yet. And that's one thing we really want to get implemented is institutional controls. So there are two types of institutional controls, generally speaking, that we're looking at for the site. So the first is what's called an individual environmental land use restriction. So that is overseen by the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. And that is essentially the responsible party goes to the landowner and says, we want to place this restriction on your property. Do you want to agree? And so in this case, it would be, I will not use my well for drinking water. I will not install new wells, things like that. So as you can imagine, I think when we counted, there was about 140 parcels at this site that would need to be done at. So that's one of them. The other part of an ELUR is it needs to be recertified every year by the property owner. So that also means that every single year, the property owner would, in coordination with the responsible party, we have to recertify that, yep, we're still following these requirements. And you're the expert on that part of it. The other thing we and the PRP group would like, and this was actually something that was requested by the town in the 2020 ROD, was the implementation of what's called a GICT. And what that means is more of a universal district that the town creates that overlays all of these properties. And it's one single action that basically says, all of these parcels inside this zone here, you cannot do X. And in this case, it would be install a new well or use a well for drinking water purposes. Now,
So if you had an existing well and you were within this area, if you had an existing well, you wouldn't, it would be in this ordinance, if we passed it, it would be illegal for you to use the water from your well.
not necessarily. So there are many exemptions that can be granted, and it's really up, I mean, you would be the ones crafting it with the assistance from the PRP group. And this has actually been discussed going back to, I believe the earliest was 2014. There's been various iterations that the town and the PRP group have discussed, which properties, what you can do with it. However, I mean, you can essentially do whatever carve outs you want. I mean, you could say you can use it for irrigation. You can say that you can use it for drinking water if you get RIDEM's and EPA's permission. And essentially what that would require is sampling of the water. So it's not an end all be all, end all be all kind of thing. And the reason why those are kind of a groundwater ordinance is kind of preferred is because it makes it a lot easier for developers, homeowners, anybody looking at areas of town, because they know exactly what the rules are, rather than saying at, let's say, 14 Log Road, the requirements are this. At 15 Log Road, they're slightly different. So in this case, with the zoning ordinance, all of the requirements are the same. And it's generally better for development of the town. It's generally better for the town itself. And the other thing is it provides a lot more certainty, because I do know one of the big concerns that was expressed to us by the town was the impact on property values. And in general, I mean, this is already a Superfund site. There's nothing we can really do about it at this point. But having a zoning ordinance adds a lot of certainty to the process, because it's very specific and written what is allowed and what's not. And in general, home buyers, insurance companies like the certainty of the zoning ordinance rather than the uncertainty of, well, I have a property here, this property here has this restriction, I don't know what's allowed at this site, I don't know what's in this site. So generally towns like them because it provides a sense of security and stability in that area. And they are relatively common. There's one over, it's on the slide actually. Yeah, it's Stanley Mills Superfund site over in North Smithfield, or I should say up in North Smithfield. They have one of a groundwater zone, I believe Western Sand and Gravel, and also, well, Burrville / North Smithfield in that site. They have one as well.
And have property values been negatively affected to
Not-
your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge, no. No, and it's a very similar area. And we can provide, you know, if you're interested, we can provide a more thorough list of the sites in New England that have these zoning ordinances. And generally what we like to do is stack these. So you have both the ELUR and the town. Even though they might say exactly the same thing, it makes it a little easier to control because in one case for the zoning district, the town has control over that, and you could choose whether you want to enforce it. Whereas the ELURs, that's solely up to Rhode Island DEM. So it's two different groups working towards the same goal essentially, and it just helps prevent things falling through the cracks. The other major issue at this site in particular is ELURs require the property owner's agreement. Now, in most cases for residential properties, that's not an issue. But this site has some special areas. So, you know, as you might know, there's a couple of parcels right now where the legal owner is deceased and the holding corporations have been dissolved. So under those circumstances, the state cannot get an ELUR on those properties because essentially there's nobody to okay it. So, and unfortunately, the parcels we're talking about are the ones actually in the Superfund site. So the ones most at risk. So worst case scenario, whoever comes to own that property, you know, they could put a large scale well in. They could do a lot of things. And right now there's a lot of uncertainty because to my knowledge, I know that the PRB group is working very hard to try to figure out what exactly is going on, but there's been a lot of let's say hiding of things going on. So we're not really sure what exactly is going on legally with the ownership of some of those parcels. So one of the best ways to deal with that actually is having the two different ones to cover each other. So was there a question? No, okay.
No, I'm assuming that's the Davis parcel itself that we're talking about here. I mean, last April, we expressed our concern about having 4 houses not connected. And they're still not connected. So, I mean, this is a year later and we still don't have them connected. And theoretically, they could be drinking contaminated water. So, you know, so I'm kind of concerned about that.
So like I said, EPA cannot force anybody to connect to a water line if they don't want to. And to this, you know, of those 4 houses that we know of, 2 of them still have not even responded to our requests to just sample the water. So we've made a lot of efforts to reach out to these people, to ask them to get their wells sampled. And thus far, only 2 have responded. And when I say multiple efforts, I believe there's been at least 5 notices sent out to them. Some of them via certified mail, so we know they did receive them. And like I also said, in 2 weeks, when you go out to do the sampling, we do plan on going to those houses and actually going up to the door and knocking on the door.
Yeah, maybe you should have done that a while ago, because
It,
it's a serious issue, and maybe we should just offer to connect them, because in the
So-
meantime,
so that
people
is
drinking
actually,
contaminated water.
that's actually a violation of federal law to offer to connect them at this point. So we cannot do that.
Well, I think we have could we connect them with our water supply board?
Yeah.
Is this Greenville or East Smithfield?
Well, it should be Smithfield Water
Smithfield.
over there.
Yeah.
Correct.
So one thing I will say, I mean, you are free to have those discussions, but you also have to understand that this is not an uncommon problem that we see with residences refusing to connect to water lines, mainly because many see it as they're going from free water to water they have to pay for. So this is not an uncommon thing, and this site actually has a much higher than average uptake on people accepting the water line. Typically, there's actually a much higher number of people who don't. So it's actually a testament that there's only 4 of this that did not want to connect. So I also don't think it's a correct characterization to say that they're potentially drinking hazardous material, hazardous drinking water, because we have no evidence to date to suggest that. And the most recent sampling round, which is, there was one done in 2014, and I believe one done in 2020 at one of the houses, and both were non-detect for all contaminants, site contaminants. So I don't think it's a correct characterization to say that they might be drinking hazardous water. Yes.
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
I worked in a town for a year, so probably now can't talk without the mic. And I think that it's to the point that, we know that one of the houses did not have any detects any contamination sampling that happened recently. And the simple fact of saying, let's connect them, which would be the ideal, solution, is that these people have to agree to connect to the water line. And many people who are on, there's some people who are on private drinking wells enjoy the freedom of having that drinking well and not being connected to public water. So I think the first step would be, like Joe was saying, for us to do the sampling, the most recent sampling this year, we're going to do at the end of this month, try to connect with those 2 people who haven't got back to us yet, and then talk to them and give them the situation, ask them, what is it that you want? Do you want to be connected? Ideally, the town will like you to be connected because we're afraid of potential exposure. And like Joe said, we don't have a reason to believe that there is an exposure right now, and figure out if that, is something that they want. Going back to this institutional control and having an overlay district, that would be helpful because, like Joe was saying, it provides a level of certainty, and also it makes so that you are able to craft the way you want the zoning ordinance to look, in the way that you want it. And now everyone knows like the rules of engagement going forward in terms of what wells are there now and what wells could potentially in the future. Because without any guidelines or laws or regulations, like Joe said, people are free to do what they want. And our goal, and I think your goal as well, is to prevent any potential exposure pathways. And, having a groundwater well nearby a Superfund site with contamination in the bedrock that, could be a potential exposure pathway. So that's why this institutional control is important, especially from a town level, because I know I worked as a planner. People have to come in, get special permits and variances, have to go to the planning board, and these laws, zoning laws, have to be looked at for all of these projects that come in. So with, the zoning ordinance, that is a helpful part of the process, along with the ELURs that Joe was saying. You have a 2-level layer of protection and 2 groups, going towards the same goal. So that's why I think it's pretty important that, we try to move forward on this. And also, our job is to protect human health and the environment. And I think with the sampling and, seeing what these homeowners want, that's a good step in that direction. So, once we have those results, that'll be, and talk to these homeowners, we'll know where, we can go from there. But I think zoning ordinance is probably a proactive step that could be taken to have a part of a solution to this issue that we have right now.
Thank you.
So I just want to add one thing about, you mentioned the tiny stakes to sample. Unfortunately, the way the Superfund law is structured, if there is a responsible party, which in this case there is, they are the ones responsible for performing all of the sampling and coordinating. So while EPA and RIDEM may be the face of the project, it's ultimately the responsible party who's the one doing the sampling. So I just want to make it clear that it's not actually EPA going out and doing the sampling of these properties. We actually are prohibited by law from doing that in this case because there's a responsible party outside of a few emergency situations. And so since our last meeting in April, we've reached out several times, and we have to allow a certain time period to pass before we can send another notice. So that's unfortunately why it's taken so long. Had we received a better response, we may have been able to do the sampling much faster. But unfortunately, the 2 who were not responding kind of slowed things down for the rest of us. However, we're moving forward from that, and we should have the results likely by early April. And I think we're all confident that they're going to show that it'll be very likely there's no contamination present at all. So there should be no risk for these 4 homeowners that are still on their wells. Yeah.
And in terms of the response from the homeowners, getting notices in the mail and whatnot, I understand some people just look at something and don't open it with mail. Like, people get a lot of junk mail. So I totally understand your point about going to their door and, asking them, which is going to be the plan for the sampling event, to say, we have the equipment and the materials right now to perform the sampling. Hopefully they answer the door. I think it's planned to be later in the day, so it'll be, somewhere around when they'd be probably getting home from work or something like that. So hopefully they're there and we'll respond back to, open the door and have signed the consent to access, and then we can perform the sampling. But I do agree that that is going to be a good next step to getting that done.
Yeah, and like Aaron said, part of the problem is also they're unfortunately required to sign what's called a access agreement in order to allow the PRP group to enter the property. And that does, unfortunately, scare some people off from having the sampling done. But like I said, we should have that done by the end of this month.
Awesome, thank you.
All right.
Let us know how those come out.
Yep.
In April.
Thanks.
I really appreciate you coming. Any questions? Good. All right, moving on to minutes. A, move that the minutes of the February 20th, 2024 executive session meeting held pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws, Section 42-46-5A2, existing litigation, PC-2023-00586, Brown Physicians, Inc. versus Christopher Celeste and collective bargaining to discuss a memorandum of understanding modifying the collective bargaining agreement for the period July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026 between the town of Smithfield and Smithfield Lodge Number 17, Fraternal Order of Police, be approved as recorded and sealed.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item B, move the minutes of the February 20th, 2024 open session meeting be approved as recorded.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There are no appointments. Moving on to public hearings. Conduct a public hearing for the submission of the Town of Smithfield's 2023 annual RIP DES stormwater report to Rhode Island DEM. I declare this public hearing open. If anyone would like to speak on this matter, they can come up to the podium.
Hi, good evening, Council. Kevin Cleary, Town Engineer, for the record. To date, as of last Friday, we received no public comments on the open public notice period. We advertised legally in the Valley Breeze and on the town's website for the last 2 weeks. And if there's any questions regarding any of the highlights of the report that was prepared as a draft, at this point, we're prepared to finalize it and authorize the town manager to sign the report upon the council's approval.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And based on the no response, that means that there's not a need for the public hearing, so we can actually close it as we speak.
That's correct, sir.
Public hearing closed. We have a motion?
Yes, I move that the Smithfield Town Council accept the year 2023 RIP DES Small MS4 Annual Report as submitted, including any attachments and amendments, and authorize the town manager to submit to RIDEM as required.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Conduct a public hearing to consider, discuss, and act upon approving the transfer of a B vitrular license from Richard Conti DBA Cafe Centro, located at 566 Putnam Pike, to TAC LLC DBA Cook and Dagger, same location with the hours of operation to be Monday through Sunday from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations, local ordinances, a copy of the retail sales permit, and certificate of good standing from the Rhode Island Division of Taxation. I declare this public hearing open. Anyone like to speak?
Hello. I'm Barbara Rich, and I live at 9 West Cottage Avenue, and I'm right behind the Cook and Dagger. So my questions are, what's the capacity of the restaurant, and how many parking spaces do they have?
Is anyone from the Cook? Would you like to come up and speak? Thank you very much. Just state your name and address, please.
I'm Taylor Crickle, 11 Jocelyn Street, North Providence. Right now, we sit about 90 people. I'm unsure about the number of spaces. I know we have about 10 up front, and then at least another, I want to say 20 behind the restaurant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more discussion? We'll close the public hearing. We have a motion?
Move passage.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to licenses. Consider, discuss, and act upon approving a new vitrilene license for TAC LLC DBA Cook and Dagger, located at 566 Putnam Pike, as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations, local ordinances, the signature of the Smithfield Fire Chief, owner of premises, and a copy of the retail sales permit.
Move passage.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 B, consider, discuss, and act upon approving the renewal of one vitrilene-only license as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances. And this is for the Fresh Monkey, 9 Cedar Swamp Road, Unit 5.
Move passage.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consider, discuss, and act upon approving 8 one-day special event licenses for the Smith Appleby House for a summer concert series, 220 Stillwater Road. These events will be hosted by the Smithfield Parks and Recreation Department. All special event licenses for the Smith Appleby House are subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances.
Move passage.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item D, consider, discuss, and act upon approving 2 one-day special event licenses for the Smithfield Parks and Recreation Department for a food truck event at 1 William J. Hawkins Jr. Trail on the following dates: Monday, July 1st for an Independence Day celebration, and Thursday, August 22nd for a community night out.
Can I just add, Council President, if we make sure to cover in the case of unfortunate weather for the July 1st, to make July 6th as well, just in the case that, God forbid, the weather does not cooperate on July 1st. Yeah, any substantive date that might change due to the weather.
Randy, I have a question. Did we have more than just 2 last year?
Usually there's 3. I'm not sure why they don't have the June date worked out.
Can they come back?
Oh, of course, this is just to get these 2 that the dates were finalized on.
All right, thank you. Move passage.
Second, discussion, it says that not more than 250 people are expected. Is
No.
that accurate?
What the way that the checklist works is that expected number of persons in attendance more than, well, why did they check? No. Lynn, any understanding to why this would be taken and checked? No.
It should be yes. wouldn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I would think,
It's the
yeah,
first time I saw it,
because-
so
Good catch.
it'd definitely be a lot more
There
than
are more than
250
that,
people.
yes.
Yeah. If we don't have 250 people, we have bigger problems.
Yes.
So we have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item E, consider, discuss, and act upon approving 12 one-day beer wine licenses for Rhode Island Football Club for soccer matches at 1150 Douglas Pike. These events will be hosted by the Rhode Island Football Club. All events for the Rhode Island Football Club are subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances.
Move passage.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item F, consider, discuss, and act upon approving a new mobile food truck license for Red's Kitchen, Inc., DBA Red's Kitchen, 133 Farm Drive, Cumberland, Rhode Island, with a Rhode Island reg number 82868-66255, as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations and local ordinances.
Move passage.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item G, consider, discuss, and act upon approving a new solicitation license for renewal by Anderson, soliciting windows and doors as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations, local ordinances, and the following conditions. The Smithfield Police Department is to be notified each time the applicant is soliciting, including which area of town solicitation will take place. Solicitation may take place between the hours of 9 a.m. and 6 p.m., April 1st through September 30th, and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., October 1st to March 31st of 2024. If conditions are not adhered to, the applicant will be required to appear before the town council.
I have a question before we do anything. My understanding is that a few of the individuals have some issues.
Yes, and they were reviewed. And I just had the additional conversation prior to the meeting because it was raised by some of the other council members as well, and they are not disqualifying situations.
They're not disqualifying?
Correct.
Are they disqualifying if they're found guilty of an issue?
If there, I think the chief just went in the hallway with the other individuals. If you can come on up and speak at the microphone, sir.
Hi.
You can just state your name, yeah.
Yeah, so my name is Hernan Avila. I'm one of the managers for Proximity Marketing, Rhode Island. Sorry about that. So this is my first time, I'm sorry. So we were just looking to solicit, we were there last year, just for the town of Smithfield, Rhode Island.
Correct, but I guess there's some concerns about some of the members that you have that you filed the request for, so if you could speak upon that.
Yeah, so we were recently in Portsmouth, well, in Mashpee. We're in Portsmouth now. So at Mashpee, Massachusetts, they did a thorough check, and I guess one of the canvassers, his name's Josh Orlando, something he did but way before 18 that happened. I didn't talk too much to him about it, but I know it's not supposed to be shown. I guess Mashpee was able to pop that up, so he had to come in the next day with a typed-in letter to the captain, like basically saying that it's not supposed to be there, and I can't remember as to what the captain had Josh Orlando write. I just know he approved them the next day. And then we went to apply for Portsmouth a month later. Everything was great. But then with Smithfield, of course, the same thing clearly was brought up, so.
Well,
One of the individuals was an arrest for a suspended license, a warrant issued because he had a suspended license, but it wasn't anything serious.
Yeah.
I think if the council, if you so choose to move forward with it, I'd suggest that the same letters are provided for the council to allow those members to be in our community, if that would satisfy.
Right.
Okay, so basically, in order to get our permits, you would have the individual, I'm pretty sure it was just one individual typing.
There was two individuals.
Oh, okay. All right. So you guys want them to write a typed-in letter to the captain, basically explaining that
To
situation?
the town clerk's office, explaining the situation and what occurred and why we should allow them to operate in the town.
Okay.
Okay, and
All
then,
right.
then the council will make that as part of their motion. So until those letters are received, the town clerk will be holding the license.
Okay. Is there any way, sir, could we possibly, like, say if I have them type it into, like, tomorrow morning, could we come in tomorrow afternoon possibly? Or?
The quickest the letter gets to her,
Okay.
then you can leave with it.
Okay, no problem. I'll definitely be here tomorrow afternoon. I'm sorry.
Perfect.
Can you let him know the individuals' names
Yeah.
later on, not on?
They're in the packet.
Just to,
Okay.
for me to.
Yeah, those individuals just,
You can just, you can have a seat and she'll tell you after the meeting. We should be done shortly.
Thank you very much. Pleasure of the council.
So, Mr. President, I move passage with conditions that they have to come in with a legal document saying the issues that these two gentlemen had. Yep.
We have a second.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Old business, there is none. Moving on to new business. Consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a request for proposals for townwide on-call plumbing services.
This is just allowing the town to go out to bid. This is similar to our process that we did with the electrical services. It allows us to lock in a rate and get the most bang for our buck, and also to have them on call for any of our plumbing needs and any of our town facilities.
Move passage.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Consider, discuss, and act upon adopting a resolution to declare the Human Services Department at the East Smithfield Neighborhood Center to be named in honor of Vivian Orbach, sponsored by Councilman John J. DeSoni Jr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Vivian was a statue in the town of Smithfield for a number of years. She worked in the Human Services Department for 28 years. She was a great lady. She did a lot for the underprivileged. I had the pleasure of working with Vivian on a number of occasions, got Vivian a number of grants when I was in the Senate. Obviously, she's surely missed, and I move passage.
Thank you very much. Have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion from the council? When will this happen? Is it be a ceremony or not sure yet?
Well, yes, but we're still a ways from getting the center open.
Okay.
So this is a placeholder until the neighborhood center is ready to be occupied.
Beautiful.
I didn't want anybody to scoop that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item C, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a bid award for lavatory renovations at the Smithfield, at the senior center.
Good evening.
Hi.
Scarlett Carrero, the Senior Center Director. So for the lavatory renovations, the committee evaluation team met. We evaluated all the bids that we received, and we'd like to award the lowest qualified bidder for our seniors, which is Red Oak Remodeling.
And if you just don't mind telling the council and the public about the funding source for this project, I think you should be very excited about it. So if you want to share that information.
It's grant funded, and it's coming from the Office of Healthy Aging.
Good, move passage.
Thank you.
Second. And just to clarify, there are no Smithfield taxpayer money involved. It's all grant money, right?
It's 100% funded by the grant, am I correct?
Yes, it's going to be partly funded from the grant from OHA, and then also some funding is going to come from our other community block grant that we received.
So yes, exactly, to answer your question. I just want to make sure, I thought it was pretty close. I just want to make sure it was 100%. So no taxpayer dollars, no Smithfield taxpayer dollars.
Correct.
Let's see if the next one is. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item D, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing the purchase of one Used 2021 Ford E450. Elkhart coach for the senior center from Tesco Bus Sales, Oregon, Ohio, in an amount not to exceed $86,475.00.
So the senior center is in desperate need of a new van. We have several safety concerns with two of our vans that we currently have, so we're down to our 29 passenger. And so we are in desperate need of a new van. We did extensive research on various buses available, and this was the best bang for our buck, as Randy would say. It's a 2021, and it only has 18,000 miles on it. And
What's the other van, the 2019? Is that the newer one?
that's the newer one, that's the 29 passenger. Yeah, so that's just not realistic as our daily driver. That's more for trips and things of that nature because of the size of it. So this would be more of our daily driver. We're still waiting on the 2022 conversion van that was purchased. And that's, I think, up to 2 years that we've been waiting for that one. So the build is taking a long time. We're waiting for seats, we're waiting for the chassis. And so the best option right now is for us to be able to purchase this van, this bus, that's ready to go and be delivered to us from Ohio.
Thank you.
Where's the money coming from?
So the funding will be coming from prior capital that has been reserved for other projects. We had residual here from the town hall and town administration for vehicles. We're allotting that to this project because those vehicles have been purchased already in prior years. So we're in good situation for all town vehicles. So I'm requesting the council to allocate those funds to fund this and take care of this immediate need.
So this was not budgeted for, because I noticed,
Correct.
as I spoke to you earlier about, this was in our next budget, which has not been approved.
Correct. And unfortunately, due to the inability of the current vehicles to be considered for reinspection, we needed to act a little faster than next year's budget, unfortunately.
Yeah, both of the vans that we do, the buses that we do have right now, we're not even able to drive them right now. They're not safe for our seniors. There's just a lot of safety concerns. And one is not inspected as well.
What do you think the turnaround, will this be shipped, will be driven back?
Somebody's gonna drive it to us, yep, for, with the delivery fee.
Okay.
So, and it's coming from, Ohio. So it's about 2 weeks.
So you mentioned a lot of vehicles here. How many usable buses do we have right now?
One, the 29
Just one?
passenger.
And that's usable?
Correct. That's what we're using right now. But if we're picking up one person, it's
It's a one passenger?
it's a 29 passenger.
29 passenger?
Right, so if we're picking up one person to come to the center, it's just not logical to keep using that.
And so this one would be a smaller one?
Correct.
Move passage.
We have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
I just want to know, Ed DeMail 75 Whipple, what's the warranty?
Can you state your
left?
name and address, please?
Yeah, Ed DeMail 75 Whipple Road. What is the warranty left on this van? Is it a 15 passenger? It's a little smaller. And I don't know the name of the van, but they're tough to work on. You need mechanics for those vans. I know driving the ride bus, but they got to take half the engine out to put a alternator. But if there's a warranty left, I wish she'd just repeat the warranty, and I think it's a 15 passenger.
Do you know what the warranty is?
Not off the top of my head, but I do know that of the ones that we researched, this one did have a better warranty. And it's a 20 passenger. And it does have the ADA lift that we need in the back, so it has the capacity to transport 2 wheelchair.
Great, thank you. Yep. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a potential transfer of town property located at 0 Clarence Thurber Boulevard, Assessors Plat 46, Lot 9 and 327 to the Smithfield Land Trust. Go ahead.
Hello again, Barbara Rich. I'm still at 9 West Cottage Ave, but I'm also the chair of the Smithfield Land Trust. On February 1st, the trustees of the Smithfield Land Trust voted to request that the town council consider and approve the transfer of Plat 46 lots 9 and 327 from the town of Smithfield to the Smithfield Land Trust. We did extensive investigation of the property. It's a really beautiful property. I believe it is turned out to be 38.4 acres. I think I had the wrong number on there. That abut the Stillwater Reservoir. The Stillwater Reservoir, also known as the Woonasquatucket Reservoir, and the Sand Trace Development property on Log Road. Members of the Land Trust walked and evaluated the property and have identified it as an important property to protect. Property would help protect the Woonasquatucket watershed from further runoff and mitigate some of the negative effects on the reservoir from the runoff from the planned 160 residential units. It's a beautiful property which is home to a large variety of plants and wildlife, and it contains many vernal pools, wetlands. It's very wet. It would provide a needed footprint of green space contiguous with the open space planned by the Sand Trace, we call it Sand Trace, but the development on Log Road. And it is near the farmland protected on Swan Road. There's a great deal of evidence of wildlife activity, and as development increases without any open space for wildlife, a negative impact on the entire neighborhood will result. Historic Cemetery number 74 has been marked and identified on this property. It's in terrible shape. The Land Trust would continue with efforts to preserve and protect this historic burial ground. Property also contains a number of recently used unmarked rough trails, and there's evidence of recent use by people for a variety of activities, including ATV use, campfires, and the property also includes debris from past dumping of construction waste and gravel operations. So we think that it would be a blessing to the town to protect it and to just keep it as open space, and we're willing to work on that and mitigate some of the issues on the property.
Thank you.
What's the difference between a potential transfer and a transfer?
Well, $50.
Yeah.
About $50.
Yeah.
I don't know why we had potential, but it should be the vote on a transfer.
Yeah, I'm going to move that we authorize a transfer of the town property located at Clarence Thurber Boulevard. I guess it's 0. Assessors Plat 46 lots 9 and 327 to the Smithfield Land Trust.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item F, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a change order request number 16 and number 18 to J.G. Edwards Construction for Phase 1B renovation work at the East Smithfield Neighborhood Center in the amount not to exceed $10,406.00.
I would just like the council to authorize not potentially authorize this. No, these, I don't know how the heck we put the potential in there. I'm sorry about that, Council Vice President. Change orders 16 and 18 deal with 2 small ends that needed to be revised. Water main service coming in and the backflow preventer so we can get the water connected, as well as some reworking and testing of the gas lines so that we can get Rhode Island Energy to turn the gas back on the center prior to our getting to the next big phase of the project.
Thank you. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item G, consider, discuss, and act upon approving tax abatements in the amount of $68.10.
Move passage.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item is public comment. If anyone would like to get up and speak, they're more than welcome. Just leave your name and your address. Yeah.
Joe? You want to get up? Next meeting. Yeah,
Okay, all right.
We'll
I was
put
just
you-
wondering, I thought you were moving, so.
we'll put you on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.